This is in the locker room. This is before the game ended. Before the game ended. She comes out in the locker room and posts this. Like, what are we doing?
Sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, is anybody on this team gonna stand up for Caitlin Clark? JC Sheldon grabbing Caitlin Clark all game, clawing at her. It's like tonight was a brawl, folks. Tonight was a brawl, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, is anybody on this team going to stand up for? And Sophie Cunningham.
Sophie Cunningham wasn't hired to be a bodyguard, but that's exactly what she became after watching her teammate, Caitlin Clark, get assaulted on the court with a flagrant cheap shot. Something inside her snapped. She went from teammate to enforcer. In the blink of an eye, and the WNBA was not ready for the consequences. This is the story of how one player's raw, unapologetic loyalty created a new era of justice in the Lega brand of justice, enforced not by referees, but by pure, cold-blooded intimidation. Caitlin Clark didn't just walk into the WNBA. Arrived with a target on her back so massive it needed its own zip code. From the moment she was drafted, she wasn't just another highly touted rookie. She was a cultural phenomenon, the designated savior of the league, expected to lift viewership to unprecedented heights. And with that immense fame came a dark and dangerous reality. Every opponent wanted a piece of her. This wasn't just about playing tough defense. It was about sending a message from veteran players who felt their years of hard work had been overlooked. Two hungry young guns wanting to make a name for themselves. Everyone saw Clark as a benchmark. The whispers around the league were clear. Go after the rookie. Don't let her get comfortable. Make her earn every single point. The physicality was relentless from her very first game. A constant stream of off-ball bumps, hard screens, and aggressive shoves, all meticulously designed to test her composure and physically prove she didn't belong. But there's a razor-thin line between a competitive welcome to the league moment and a coordinated campaign of outright aggression. As the season wore on, that line became increasingly blurred. The simmering tension finally boiled over in a game against the notoriously tough Connecticut Sun. It began with Connecticut's JC Sheldon guarding Clark with her signature pestering defense. Then came the swipe not at the ball, but a clear rake across Clark's face that sent her reeling. Visibly frustrated, Clark gave a slight nudge to create space, a standard reaction from any player. In a normal game, that would have been the end of it. But this was not a normal game. What happened next escalated the situation from a physical play to a flagrant assault. From out of nowhere, Marina Mabrey, a player not even involved in the initial sequence, charged in like a heat-seeking missile. There was no attempt to play the ball, no basketball reason for her actions. She lowered her shoulder, squared up, and chucked Caitlin Clark to the ground with startling force. It was a cheap shot, plain and simpler, blatant, disrespectful, and dangerous act that had nothing to do with competition and everything to do with intimidation. As Caitlin Clark hit the hardwood, something inside Sophie Cunningham seemed to break. You could almost see the shift in her eyes, a change from competitive focus to cold, hard fury. This was no longer just a game. Her teammate, the undeniable engine of their team and the future of the league, had just been blindsided right in front of her. While others looked on in a mixture of shock and anger, Cunningham's expression hardened into a mask of chilling resolve. In that single, potent instant, her job description unofficially changed. She was no longer just a forward for the Indiana Fever. She was now Caitlin Clark's personal security, a self-appointed guardian with a taste for vengeance. It was a silent, intense transformation, a promise made without uttering a single word, that this disrespect would not stand. The league, the referees, and especially their opponents didn't know it yet. But Sophie Cunningham had just clocked in for a brand new role. Enforcer. What made the situation so volatile? And what justified? Cunningham's new mission, in the eyes of many, was the league's baffling and inadequate response. After Mabry's blatant shove, everyone expected a swift and severe penalty. An immediate ejection seemed obvious. A suspension felt necessary. Instead, the official ruling landed with a thud. In a complete abdication of responsibility, Caitlin Clark, Marina Mabouri, and Tina Charles were all assessed with simple technical fouls. Mabouri, the clear aggressor, was allowed to remain in the game. That week, a most cowardly response from the referees sent a horrifying message to the rest of the WNBA. It was effectively open season on Caitlin Clark, and the officials weren't going to do a thing to stop it. This failure to enforce their own rules did more than just anger fans. It forced the Indiana Fever's hand. If the league refused to protect its biggest star, then her teammates would have to do it themselves. The league's failure created a power vacuum, and Sophie Cunningham was more than willing to fill it with her own brand of justice. She wasn't the type to file a formal complaint or wait for a post-game review. She believed in a much more direct and immediate form of communication. She bided her time, letting her anger simmer until the perfect opportunity presented itself. And it did. Later in the game, the target came into view. J.C. Sheldon, the player who had initiated the whole ugly sequence. As Sheldon drove down the floor, Cunningham made her move. There was nothing random about it. She delivered the receipt for the earlier shot on Clark, a direct and calculated act of retaliation. Wrapping Sheldon up in a hard foul, her body language screamed, "I'm not having it. We can go right here, right now." This was a message sent not just to Sheldon, but to the entire Connecticut Sun and every other team watching. The old way of doing things, where their rookie could be treated like a punching bag without consequence, was officially over. A new precedent was being set, not by the referees, but by the sheer force of one player's will. The scuffle that followed and the subsequent ejections were just the punctuation on her statement. As Cunningham walked off the court, the Indiana crowd roaring their approval. Her new status was cemented. From that moment on, Sophie's entire presence on the court transformed. This was no longer just about playing basketball. It had evolved into a tense game of psychological warfare. She became a walking deterrent. The Sophie stare became a tactical weapon, an intense, soul-piercing gaze she would lock onto any opponent who got even a little too physical with Clark. She'd plant herself directly between Clark and an aggressive defender, not to set a screen, but to draw a clear, uncrossable line in the sand. She was communicating a powerful message without ever saying a word, establishing a new, unspoken rule for the entire league. Touch her, and you deal with me directly. It was a primal, fiercely protective instinct on full display, and it was terrifyingly effective. Opponents who once felt bold enough to take cheap shots now had to hesitate. They had to look over their shoulder because Sophie was always watching, always waiting. This new dynamic introduced a hidden, unspoken cost for every team facing the Fever: the Sophie tax. Suddenly, opposing coaches' game plans got a lot more complicated. Any coach who scribbled "get physical with Clark" on their whiteboard now had to add a crucial follow-up and be fully prepared to deal with Cunningham. It forced a split-second calculation in every opponent's mind. Is a single cheap shot on the rookie really worth spending the rest of the game being hunted? In the end, what happened on that charged and volatile night was so much more than just a fight. It was the public coronation of the WNBA's new unofficial sheriff. It was the moment one player's fierce, raw, and unapologetic loyalty completely rewrote the unwritten rules of engagement for an entire league. Sophie Cunningham didn't wait for permission. She saw her teammate being systemically targeted, saw the officials fail to act, and took the law into her own hands. She became the bouncer, the bodyguard, and the enforcer. all rolled into one. The message sent that night was loud, physical, and crystal clear. The days of taking free shots at the league's brightest star are over. And as the dust continues to settle, one question now hangs over every arena in the WNBA. Who will be brave or foolish enough to test that line now?